Alrighty, and we're on.
All right, let's go.
I'm here with Anthony Redward.
You go, man.
And so I met you obviously through Southern Fighting Championship.
Yep.
And it's probably what, was it event 3 or 2? 2. I think it was 2.
1, 2, 3. Was the one at the Snake Pit?
Yes.
That's 3.
That's 3. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Lena, one of my other friends, obviously helps with that promotion as well. But you're there behind the scenes and, you know, running around like a headless chicken on the night. Plenty of fighters on.
Yeah.
And you just had the 2 events over the weekend.
We did. We had SFC 4, so we ran. We're pretty. It's pretty convenient actually. Like we're in the gym here recording this, but next door we got an event center.
Yep.
So we run all our amateur events just in there as like feeder event type thing.
Yep.
Which, you know, in the long term we're kind of looking at that feeder event to push it into the pro
Yep.
type stuff. So it's good for guys to get an opportunity just to compete and then talk to us about turning pro. So we become a bit of a platform for them.
Yep.
Just that sort of, you know, club level.
Yep.
Club level competition that allows them to sort of, I don't know, cut their teeth, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, you know, that's one of the things, like, you know, when you think about, say, as an example, people always bring up like Muay Thai in Thailand, right?
Yeah.
Those guys, they're never really sparring hard in the gym because they're competing like every
All
week
the
or
time.
every second week,
Yeah.
right? But it makes you so comfortable, you know, under the lights, under the pressure,
Yes.
right? Versus
Yes.
a lot of guys who, if you've only ever done your work in the gym and then you go and do an event, you know, whether it's amateur or pro, a lot of people shy away from the lights.
Man, there's a lot to be said for just being in front of people as well.
Yep.
You know, like I know it's competing, but we try to blood our guys by, I use the word bloods just to break them in type thing. We blood our guys usually by taking them to other gyms to spar first. So that, you know, there's a big mistake made by coaches that train them in the gym. Everyone can be good in the gym, but you don't know how you're going to react until you step out of your own zone, you know?
Yeah.
So that is probably the first step. But yeah, you're right. Then stepping into something like this, then it gives them a chance to compete regularly, sort of mid to low pressure. It's not too bad, you know. But competing is vital to performance. So
absolutely.
you can't replicate it.
Yeah, there's I heard John Danaher use this. He calls it the plank parable.
Yeah,
and basically he talks about how, like, if he was to put a wooden plank on the floor, and ask you to run across it, you could do it with your eyes closed.
Yeah,
right. But then you go and put that, you know, 50 stories up between 2 buildings, and you ask them to do the same thing. It's the same task.
Exactly right.
But it's the fear of falling off now that
right.
makes them go, oh shit, it's not the same.
Yeah, it's all the variables.
Yeah. But you know, when you think about it, like, you know, like for me, I always, when I'm at the, you know, talking to the fighters at the back, I always ask them, you know, are you nervous or are you excited?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a bit of a pointed question because there's no difference between nerves and excitement. It's the same feeling in your stomach.
Yeah.
Right? You get that butterflies in your stomach.
Yeah.
And you get that, you know.
The adrenaline dump. And
yeah.
I try to let my guys sort of feel it. One thing I've noticed with fighters over the years, like even myself competing as an amateur, is just you try to fight because you think it's fear.
Yeah.
It's not fear.
Yeah.
It's like the adrenaline's a fight or flight. So like let it happen.
Yeah.
Embrace it, let it come, actually let it become a natural feeling, and then each time that happens, it just becomes something that happens, part of your process.
Yeah, it's normal.
You
You normalise it.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. All right. Let's pull it all the way back because I want to obviously talk to you about some of the other things that you do because I found it pretty interesting as well. But where did you grow up?
Born in the city, so I was in 5 Dock till I was, I don't know, say 10, then Campbelltown.
Oh wow.
After
Okay.
that, yeah, so out at Campbelltown, did most of my high school there. Couple of stints, couple of years back into the city. And then as an adult, I was out at Camden.
Yep.
So I was out there for probably 15 years, and then it's where I had my first gym.
Yep.
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
Oh, okay. So, so why the move out of 5 Dock into?
Parents.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the time, I think there may have been a split happening with the parents. So they decided to go separate ways. They ended up getting back together later, but we ended up out at Campbelltown.
Okay.
So it's just family situation basically.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
And, like Campbelltown would have been a pretty big change from 5 Dock back then.
Yeah.
Like 5 Dock was still city, and then
it was 80s, man. So it was like 5 Dock back then was like full of Italians, and it was like cool place to grow up as a little kid because you could just go and, you know, get down the road and there was someone cooking pasta and you'd be eating. And just a cool place, you know. Campbelltown was a bit rough, but it was still all right. Like, I don't know, I kind of enjoyed getting out amongst it in Campbelltown. We used to, get up in the mornings, disappear for the day, go and muck up for the day and come home, you know. So it was a fun place. Yeah. Probably, got into a bit of trouble here and there, but that's just how it rolls in Campbelltown, you know. Yeah. It was and then as an adult, it's just different kettle of fish. You grow up. you buy a house, you sort of you grow out of all that stuff, you know.
Oh, don't be in too much of a rush. We've got plenty of time for this conversation, so I always like to slow it down. You know, it's funny sometimes with the first time people come on the podcast, they try and give me like this really fast synopsis, and I'm like, oh, whoa, let's go all the way back here.
I think as coaches we're used to doing it quick.
Yeah,
3-minute rounds.
That's it. Trying to bust it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess from a memory standpoint, right? Like, you obviously remember, you know, the food and the pasta, the Italians, you know, around 5 Dock. Were there any other standout memories at home from when you were still in 5 Dock before you moved to Campbelltown?
Yeah, like it was I don't know, like I got to a certain period of my life as a teenager and only really started to remember growing up then. Like I had so my dad actually died when I was 2. So I was I was a little kid when he died. So
and do you know how?
Yeah, he had a heart attack.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, so skip me. I'm healthy at school,
which
is good. So I think it was, I don't know, maybe a genetic thing for him. So ended up with my mum married again, and she married an English guy that had come out on the ships from England.
Wow.
What, as
sailor?
A kid. No, just that sort of that program they had where they'd send people from England to Australia as part of like a work program.
Oh, yep.
He was an alcoholic. So we had like a fairly turbulent childhood. So I had 4 sisters.
Yep.
Growing up.
Younger?
I sort of, I had 1 older, 3 younger.
1 older, 3 younger.
Yeah. I always found myself in kind of not a father role, but a kind of like a protector role.
Yep.
So I was kind of always, you know, because I was the house full of females, alcoholic father. I don't blame him, man. Like he was, you know, thrown into a situation where maybe he wasn't prepared for it, you know, then maybe he still had some things he was dealing with from growing up too. You know?
I think that's everyone.
Yeah. So he chose to deal with it with alcohol, and I don't know, he was rough, man, but kind of like made me resilient.
Yeah.
You know, I found that growing up, I felt a lot of resilience. I found that in my home life, that I was able to like overcome a lot of things that were happening in the house. Still find a childhood.
Yep.
You know, my sisters were. We had a fairly interesting how could you put it, social background in our house with religion. So I had on one side of my family were hardcore Catholics, but hardcore criminals.
Okay. Yeah.
On the other side of my family were Jehovah's Witnesses.
No way.
Yeah. So I had 2 split sort of faiths in my house, I guess.
Yep.
I grew up around criminality, so I was visiting my uncles in jail. So I'd go to Long Bay, you know, once every, say, 6 to 8 weeks to visit my uncle.
Yep.
They were either on some sort of serious charge to do with, you know, drug manufacturing, or someone had gone missing, or so it was like, it was pretty hardcore shit. Like and I was a kid, you know. So I actually remember I had an uncle, Roger. He's dead now. We were living in Rosemeadow at the time, and he rocked up and literally just knocked on our door. We hadn't seen him in years, and he rocked up. And he just walked in and he sat down and he said to us, you know, "It was good to see you all. You know, this is late 80s, so you can imagine the sort of money that they were making back then."
Yeah.
He just flicked out $500 and just gave us $500 each, and we're like,
all right,
we haven't seen you in like 5 years.
Yeah,
like,
what's going on?
What's going on? He goes, "Oh, I got to go." He's gone. As soon as he was gone, bang, 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 knock on the door.
Cops.
Yeah, after him, and he's had the CID after him from China, and this happened like a few times, you know, and then it kind of stopped happening. They all got some big charges, and then my Uncle Kelvin ended up dying, and so, you know, I didn't really see that side of my family for a long time.
Yeah.
Then it was sort of more thrust into the religious side, so I rebelled against that. I wasn't interested. They tried to, you know, to get me baptized and to become part of that religion. I think by the time I was 16, I was out.
Yeah. I
was already seeking like combat sports. I was, you know, going. My parents weren't interested in sport, or my mum, sorry, wasn't interested in sport at the time. I was quite a good basketballer, so I was on a New South Wales team at the time. So I'd sort of play with that, and then I went and I found boxing, and I was like, I'll go try this.
Yep.
Tried some Muay Thai and kind of found a bit of a love for it from there.
Yeah.
But everything was done outside my home. It wasn't my family were never involved in my sporting.
Yeah, they never like push you to go and do this.
They'll kind of. If I told them, they were kind of more against it. You know? So interesting. When I look at it retrospectively, I had a kind of an interesting childhood because some interesting shit happened.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's pretty crazy to be split like that. Like I think, and from a, I guess, religious standpoint, like they're quite like institutionalized, you know, like if you think about it, like, so, you know, obviously, you know, Catholicism as a religion is quite institutionalized. There's the Catholic Church, there's the Vatican, blah, blah, blah. And then the Jehovah's Witnesses are very much the same. Like they have a structure around it. Right. It's very structured. I didn't really have like anything formal from a religious structure perspective. I still am actually, you know, very curious from a religious perspective. Yeah. My father's side was definitely more Buddhist. So my grandma was very Buddhist. And so I was exposed to a lot of I guess, Buddhist ideology when I was growing up. And my mum, you know, she's like she would say she's an agnostic. You tell her anything and she'll say she'll believe it just to make you happy.
Agreeable.
Yeah. So she's very agreeable from that perspective. And she'd be like, you don't want to offend any religion, right? Like from
Buddhism has that kind of that basis to it, doesn't it? They don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, and why I appreciate having those lenses, right, is that, you know, as you get older, you now have to go and try and work out what you think is the truth for yourself.
Yes.
Right. You got to work out what your own worldview is, right? Yep. And so, you know, I guess for me, you know, like where I've sort of come to is that, you know, I think that there is a God.
Yep.
You know, and I think it's important that I think about, you know, what is my relationship with Him.
Yep.
You know, like what do I think about? You know, how do I conduct myself? You know, how do I perceive myself? How do I perceive others? How do I treat other people? Like, I think it's very important from that perspective.
Yep.
But you know, from a purely religious institution standpoint, like it's like I'm not really that into that. Like I think it's more about, you know,
the hierarchy is the thing that used to get me. So
yeah,
to do with any religion. So there's, you know, there's a social hierarchy, there's a religious hierarchy, there's someone to answer to, and they view each other based on, you know, your position in the hierarchy. That's one thing that sort of turned me off.
Yeah, it's almost counterintuitive to the idea that, you know, all men are created equal.
Exactly.
Right. So how can we be created equal if one person has one standing and another person has different? Like, I think, you know, you can understand if somebody, I think it's honorable if somebody gives their life to, you know, practicing their faith and things like that, but that doesn't make them any better than somebody else.
Yep.
Right. It's just they're at what they love and what they value is different. Just like how, you know, you and I, we found martial arts at young ages and we go, well, that's what we love.
Yeah.
right? But it's funny because, you know, that Miyamoto Musashi book about the Book of Five Rings, where he talks about, you know, when you see the way in one thing, you see it in everything.
Yep.
So, you know, he was this samurai guy who had like 60-something duels or something like that. And, you know, most combat sports guys love reading that book. And then, but not only was he like a badass samurai, like he was into calligraphy and carpentry and woodworking. It was like, you know, it's not good enough to just be a warrior. You need to also be a scholar. You need to be, you know, working on your mindset and your artistic skills and all these other things.
It's all to do with discipline, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think sometimes we miss that, especially boxing doesn't. Boxing has, you know, a martial way, but it doesn't have a martial art. How can I put it? Like a martial discipline.
Yeah.
And you find that, you know, in the boxing realms, the ones that do have that martial type discipline, maybe that samurai type discipline, are actually like very different from the rest of the boxing world.
Yeah.
So that's interesting you say that, and it's just sparked something in my head.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it came to school, right? So what kind of kid were you at school?
I was good. I was actually not a bad kid, eh? So like like in school.
Yeah.
In school I was all right. Like I didn't really get into a lot of fights like in like scraps and stuff as you know, in primary school.
Yep.
That started happening in high school. But it was yeah, no, I was all right. Like I was never I don't think I was like I think I have like pretty good common sense.
Yep.
I was never scholastically interested in becoming like a genius at any particular thing. So I probably just did enough to sort of pass and get my pen license, and you know, and I was probably more interested in going to play soccer and footy.
Yeah.
You know, I was sort of yeah, I don't know. I just went to school, come home. I was, you know, probably on detention once a month. Like, so it was not too bad. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I bounced around a lot of schools. So, you know, because it was a fairly, like I said, turbulent home life. I would have gone to, off the top of my head, maybe 9 or 10.
Wow.
Primary schools.
Yep.
Yeah, just short stints here and there, a couple of years here and there, a year here and there. So, yeah, got bounced around a bit for a while there.
Did that make it hard for you to sort of find friends, or like, I guess, how did you view friendship back then? Was it like, you know, I guess when you
always had friends.
Yep.
Yeah, I never really found it hard to get along with people. I'm pretty chill by nature, so like I think I've always found it easy to talk to people, I guess.
Yep.
I reckon compared to a teenager, I was probably maybe a little bit timid, as like, you know, from the age of like 5 to 10.
Yep.
Maybe a bit of a timid kid because there was always a lot of shit going on around me, and I was always just trying to find some calm.
Yep.
Around me. So when I was out of the home environment, I was probably like not weak, but I was fairly like timid and quiet at school, you know. So
I would say, you know, the timid ones are the ones. It's not like timid's probably not the right descriptor. It's more. I would say it's more observant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because like with my eldest, she was very much like that. She would just watch things.
Yep.
And she wouldn't really get amongst it. Like my son's the opposite. My son will crash head first into whatever environment you put him in. Unless you put him in the spotlight, then he's the opposite. Then he'll shy up and you know, not want to be the center of attention.
Yep.
Whereas my daughter she'll observe things and not want to be the center of attention. And then if it's time for her to sing a song or something like that, then she'll be the loudest one in the room. So she's
a performer.
Yeah, interesting, right? Like they're all different, but I see those things in us. Like when we were growing up, you know, you sort
100%.
of reflect back on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, what I guess from your mum's standpoint, like, did she try and ever push you in any particular direction? Like, I know you found the sports and things like that yourself, but I guess, did she ever offer you any guidance in terms of what she wanted for you or anything like that?
I think she was still learning herself.
Yeah.
I think for her it was very difficult. She probably wanted to offer us more, and she just couldn't. You know, she lost my dad. She was married very young too. You know, like, I think she was married at like, I think it was 17.
Wow.
You know, so she was from that era where
get married young. Yeah,
get married young, and she was probably still a kid herself in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And I kind of realized that when I got to a certain age, she was a kid trying to raise kids. You know, so it's would have been difficult for her. Yep. She tried as she got older. You know, by the time things sort of fell apart in the family circle and everyone had gone their own way, I got into a fair bit of trouble as a late teenager, and she was trying to rein me in that time, but too late.
Yeah.
She, you know what, she always tried to revert back to religion to try and like stabilize us, because maybe she didn't have the skills herself, you know, and I can't really blame her for that.
Yep.
Losing a husband, having an alcoholic, you know, second husband, 5 kids.
Yep.
It's pressure, you know.
Yeah.
So she would have been doing her best, you know, under the circumstances.
Yep.
We have an okay relationship. Like, there's not a massive amount of communication, but when there is, it's calm.
Yeah.
And it's not too bad. Like, I'm not a grudge holding type person, so I don't really. I think people's journey is just what happens, you know.
Yeah.
You sort of, if you hold on to, like, you get to a certain age, if you're still holding on to things, man, that happened a long time ago.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not really worth it.
Yeah.
So,
was there a point in time where that sort of, and the reason why I asked this is because I had a fairly fractured relationship with my dad for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And it was like just this one day, like I remember I had this dream and I woke up and it was just gone. Like this whole weight just lifted off me.
Yep.
Was there a moment like that for you, or was it just
just age?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just over time, I kind of started to realize a lot about myself. Like, you try and control all the variables in your life and think about all the things that happen and try and fix them. You really can't, because they're a journey that sort of they're part of the journey that has got you to where you are, and they happen for a reason, and they were just born out of circumstance.
Yep.
So like, once I realized everything around you that happens is born out of circumstance.
Yep.
You can't really like take anything personally.
Yeah, and you don't like that's one of the funniest things, because, you know, when people ask me, would you change anything, I would say I would not change a single thing. No. You know, the only thing I would do is maybe speed up some of the lessons that I had to learn so that I could get through those ones faster. because they hurt. The lessons hurt. But
yes, they do. Yeah, and you know what, man, we're always going to continue to learn from those things, and like, it's not unfortunate, but the thing is, with human behaviour, it repeats itself.
Yep.
You know, we are who we are.
Yeah, creatures of habit.
Yeah. So you are going to make those same mistakes again. It's just how you deal with them.
Yep.
You know, in the future. You know. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, to answer your question, just over time, I had realizations through my own experiences. I can't really say, you know, that
there was a moment.
There was a moment. Yeah. Just an accumulation of things.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I guess, you know, between you and your sisters, like, what was I know you mentioned you had like this sort of like a protector role, but I guess the dynamic between you and your sisters, like, did that change over the years as well?
Yeah, everyone's gone their own way. I mean, I've got 4 sisters, so one older, obviously, from my father, and then the younger ones from the second dad.
Yep.
Yeah, some of them have gone the religious way. I got a sister in Queensland. There's no real problem. Like I don't actually. Being honest with you, just being transparent. I actually got a message off my older sister the other day, and it was a nice message. I haven't answered it. I'm like that. She sent a message just basically saying, like, you're still my brother. Like, I know she probably feels a bit hurt 'cause she feels like I've probably moved on from them, but I haven't moved on. It's just I actually have a daughter, and I have a stepdaughter as well.
Yep.
And I get caught up in sort of my own life and making sure that's like everything's good.
Yep.
Because I like things to be stable and I like to be on top of everything.
Yeah.
Financially, work wise, I got fighters that I look after that are pretty much like my kids.
Yeah.
And I get caught up in that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I will message her back, but the thought behind what I'll say is that none of what I do is, me just being caught up in my life is a deliberate act.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just the path that I'm on.
Yeah.
And the sort of time that it takes up, I fully focus on it.
Yeah. I definitely resonate with that. It's like, there's plenty of people in your life that you love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But in terms of time, it's like you just, through circumstance, you just may not have the time to spend with them that you'd like to spend with them.
Exactly.
But doesn't mean you love them any less. Like,
No.
it's like that with my parents. Like, I probably don't see them as much as I should. And, sometimes I do get a bit upset with myself over that.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's like, it doesn't mean that I love them any less. It just means that I'm focused on trying to be the best version of me that I can be.
Yep.
And hopefully they understand that as well, and they still love me no matter what. And but it's like that with your friends as well. Like, you might have high school friends that you don't see for a long period of time, or people from throughout your life, whether it's from training or all these different facets of your life. And just because you don't see them regularly doesn't mean that you don't care for them. Like, you're still happy to see them succeed.
100%.
So that definitely resonates for me.
Yeah. It's and you're right. And you see those people, they pop up and you go, hey man, like, I hope you're doing good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
There's it's just the way life rolls. And particularly now, like, I think for us to become successful, like, we all want to be successful, yeah?
Yep.
You got to put a lot of time into it, and there's a lot of competition. So for you to be good at what you do,
yep.
You can't just, like maybe 10 years ago you could just wing it.
Yeah.
No, you can't wing it anymore.
Yeah, the levels I was
just in life in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think you really got to but look, I think, it's also because we're fortunate that we found something that we're passionate about.
Yeah.
Right? So there are people that, haven't even started their journey because they still don't know what they want to do in life.
Yeah.
And they think, I might try this and I might try that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's just where you're at.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
But when you found something that you do really, really enjoy, now it's about, okay, you're sort of almost trying to figure out, where your jigsaw puzzle piece fits in with the bigger scheme of things. Because, it's like combat sports is a very, very big field, right? And then, there's so many gyms, there's so many competitions, there's so many fighters, there's so many of everything, right? So many coaches, all these people, even though, like, if you probably look at it in the bigger scheme of things, like in terms of relative population, if there's 25 million people in Australia, like, it's probably not a million people that are doing martial arts.
That's
right. Right? But
that's right.
But we always want to gravitate to being the tip of the spear. Nobody does this to want to be shit. Like,
no.
you don't come and sign up to doing martial arts or joining a jiu-jitsu gym, kickboxing gym, a karate school, whatever, to go, I don't want to be better than I was yesterday.
No, that's right. Everyone comes and pushes themselves for a reason.
Yeah. And it's not even necessarily to compete with others, it's just to be better than who you were yesterday.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that's where people get, they get carried away. They think it's about, it's me versus him. Like, this is those things that I learnt, from being in the corporate field, where it's like, you see those political games where people are trying to get promoted or whatever.
Yeah.
So they feel like they got to tear the other person down. But all you need to do is just be better.
Yeah.
You be better than who you were yesterday, and your time will come. And if not, then you'll find another opportunity that will recognize that you've got the talent, that you put in the hard work. And so it's the same thing, in Australia, like, where I like to, and this is one of the things that I'm very big on. Hence why, like, I try not to, like, XFC was a bit of an opportunistic thing, but, I didn't want to compete locally because a lot of the people locally are all my mates.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right? And I don't, and like, I'm 38, like, I didn't need to do it. But I thought, I'll put on a show for everyone just to also cement myself and show people that, hey, I don't just talk. I
do this.
I do this, right? Yeah. Like, even though, I'm not, I haven't been a heavy competitor. Like I've been training my whole life. Like it's one of those things. But you know, like I like to see, you know, all the people around, you know, in our scene be successful. You know, Zachy was one of your guys who's one of my old training partners, right? Like I want to see him successful. I want to see, you know, Leonard successful. I want to see you successful. All these people that I've met and have great relationships with. You know, I want to see them successful, and so that's why, you know, like even with my own team, I tell the guys in the gym all the time, like, hey, I'm not going to get in your way. Right? I'm 38. Like, if you want to go and be a superstar, that's your job, mate.
That's right.
I'm here to just help you train and, you know, keep you sharp and and you know, I've got my own pathway to walk, and
that's the thing, man. You'll find your place in combat sports. Like whatever your skill and your niche is, it will find its own place.
Yeah.
So the analogy I sort of use is a train that, you know, everyone's on this train. The longer you stay on the train, the more chance of success you got, and that's with anything. So people fall off along the way.
Yeah.
You'll find your stop, and that's where your success will be.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So, like, to use boxing as an example, I've been part of AOS programs and New South Wales programs for a long time, and the boxers that had started out as juniors and youths, you know, back when I started as a coach on, say, the state teams, they're still there now, and they're just making it to Olympic or Commonwealth Games level. It's because they stuck with it.
Yep.
You know, so that's the biggest thing in combat sports is your time in the sport.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're either going to have, I call them 3-year fighters. You're going to have some 3-year success.
Yep.
So you're going to jump in, you're going to make some big noise.
Yep.
You'll get noticed, then you'll be out.
Yep.
Or you got the guys that are lifelong.
Yeah.
And they're the lifelong martial artists that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, that I always make that delineation between a fighter and a martial artist.
Yeah.
You know, a fighter is anybody that's jumped in the ring or jumped in a cage.
Yeah.
Right? But a martial artist is a person that has it as it's a lifestyle. Like, it's not actually a title that you can just take from jumping in the ring or a cage. It's like, do you do this every day?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, in 20 years' time, will you still be doing this?
That's right.
You know, like, that's the difference between a martial artist and a fighter. And like, it almost, you know, because I've got like a bit of a traditional background as well from the martial arts perspective.
Yep.
You know, I've always struggled with the whole, I guess, you know, the fight mentality where it's like, you know, you want to sort of get noticed and you want to get the accolades and things like that.
Yep.
Whereas, you know, the traditional mentality is always you just shut your mouth and be respectful and do it.
Right?
Yeah. So I always struggle with that. But
yeah. Do you think social media's had a bit
like,
of an influence on people's attitude towards being noticed?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
Right? Yeah, and look, it's a double-edged sword, right? The good thing about it is that people can now make a living from it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the benefit of social media. The downside is that all you see every day is just, you know, people only posting the best bits.
Best bits, man, and you see I'm just going to say this, you see the narcissism develop.
Yeah.
Like it's almost, it's not sad, but I look at it objectively and I think, hey, this person started at a certain level and they're doing quite well, but it's almost like when they don't get noticed, it's almost like they start imploding and they start posting more and it starts to become a problem.
Yeah.
You know, so there's, like being noticed in combat sports has become like a sport in itself.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know, like if your skill level's there and you're going to make it to an elite level, you will.
Yeah.
You know, you will. Like the trying to brand yourself, that's great, but you know, you've got to have something, have some substance there as well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just become another poster. You just become
it's
posting.
It's a game, right? Like you know, social media is a game, and I can actually speak to this firsthand because I've actually got a couple of secret, you know, Instagram accounts. that are completely unrelated to martial arts. I'm not going to talk about what they are, but they're like, you know, I think one of them's at like 56,000 followers.
Wow.
So it's like, you know, and I did it as a bit of a challenge to myself. I've got another friend who's really into it, and he's got a couple of accounts over 100,000, right? And you know, we sort of talked about it, and he goes, oh, you know, this is what he thinks is the formula for success. And I go, okay, well, let me try it and see if it'll work.
Yeah.
Right. And so I started it probably only in like July or something.
Wow.
Right. And to grow to that level, it was like, holy shit. And like all I did, like, okay, I won't talk about it too much, but because
don't give it away.
I won't give it away. One day I will,
and
I'll share the secret when I want to try and build a few accounts over that level first, and then to see whether it's replicable. It is, but anyway, I don't want to give it away in case anything changes before I built those accounts. But you know, I just followed the structure in terms of, you know, how many times a day should I post, you know, and just being consistent with that, and then being consistent with engaging with people and the followers and things like that. And then, like, I got to a point, I think probably only like, it was probably even maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, where I said to him, I'm actually like, because I'm not in love with this topic.
Yeah.
I'm like, why am I doing this shit?
Yeah.
Like, you just sort of feel like, I want to give it up.
Yeah.
But it's that old, image of like the two guys, digging, and then one, gives up before he hits the diamonds or the gold or whatever, and the other one keeps digging.
Yeah.
And then my friend just said, just look, even if you cut back how much you're doing, just do this. And then I was like, all right. I kept going. And then one day it was just like suddenly click, like the algorithm just picks you up.
Gotcha.
And then like the followers went from like 2,000 to 3,000 to 5,000. And then within a week it was 10,000.
So, yeah.
And then it was like,
I've been told about the algorithm and how, like, I haven't actually been shown the formula, but they say that's what it is.
Yeah. And it's just
the algorithm and it's on.
Like, I think it's and funnily enough, like there's no secret. It's actually just consistency.
Yeah.
Right? It is consistency over intensity. If you're consistent with what you do on Instagram, you will actually eventually hit the algorithm, and the algorithm will just take you to this next level.
Right.
And, 56,000 and counting. So
like a rewards program.
Yeah, it's almost like a rewards program.
Yeah.
But it sort of suckers you in, right? Like, because then you're on it every day, right?
Yep.
Which probably isn't the best for your mental health either.
No, but that's what they want.
That's what they want.
That's what they want.
So that's what they're rewarding.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So okay, we went on a massive tangent.
No, that's
there.
cool, but I'm intrigued now. Yeah.
So high school wise, when you went to high school, like, I guess from your own attitude perspective, like you mentioned, you obviously started getting into a bit of trouble in high school.
Just naturally, I don't know. You suppose you bit of testosterone and girls around, you start to have a bit of an attitude problem. Like it's. I was still a pretty good kid. Like I did all right. Academically, like it wasn't too bad.
Yep.
I was into sport. So I played, Commonwealth Bank Cup. I played Union. I was playing gridiron. I played basketball. I gave away boxing. I started like kickboxing and doing martial arts. So I did that.
Yep.
I had a friend, Vince Silaz, who I met through another friend of mine. And this guy was like a wrestler grappler from America.
Yep.
Interesting. Like now that I think about it, I was 16 when I met him. I'd been playing basketball. I've been playing state level basketball, league, all that sort of stuff. Really interested in combat sports, but didn't really have connections, so to speak.
Yep.
Vince, I met 15 or 16. I met Vince, but like I said, it was through a family friend. And he was an interesting dude. He was he worked in the jails in LA, but he was like kind of like a part of the tactical response group.
Wow.
Like that type thing. So they had, riots in the jails or someone locked down or someone was killed. These are the good dudes they sent in.
Yep.
And he was Mexican and he was a fucking hard dude. Like he'd come in because he had kids here. So he had kids with my mate's sister.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he'd go, do you want to come and train? Like I need a training partner. He goes, you're big. I was at 16. I was not much smaller than I am now. I was actually pretty big. So
yep.
It was like I hit 21 and stopped growing. So
yeah.
Yeah.
That's all right. That was me at probably 17. I stopped growing and I'm still small. Asian genetics. The only thing is I'll look like this till I'm like 60 or 70 and then boof. Like I'll lose, 2 feet in height. I'll have a walking cane and my back will be all like hunched up.
So he didn't teach me anything, to cut a long story short. He gave me a gi, started taking me around all these gyms and just started chucking me on the mats with people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was my introduction to jiu-jitsu. So I didn't know who I was rolling with.
Just getting beaten up.
I didn't know who. Sometimes I'd do the beating up because I was a footy player as well. Like
big boy.
A lot of these karate guys that were trying to get into groundwork had no idea either.
Mm.
So I was more like, fucking sweet, I can just dump this bloke, put him in some sort of fucking submission and off we go,
Yeah.
And then he started introducing like strikes and I was like, all right, sweet. So now we're sparring.
Okay.
So I was that was my introduction to jiu-jitsu and MMA and all that sort of stuff. This is in the 90s.
Yeah.
So he'd live here for 6 months and then he'd work in America for 6 months on like massive money. So I didn't get to train with him for 6 months at a time, but he'd come back and it'd be on for 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's how I started. That's how I learned there. I got back into boxing. I was out Minto PCYC off and on, out at Blacktown at a couple of places out there off and on. But yeah, in high school, to answer your question, I was an all right kid. I still had the turbulent kind of home life going on, but the old man at the time he was off working.
Yep.
So he'd be out of the home a lot. So I was kind of left to my own devices. And at 16, 15, 16, I looked like I was 18, 19, so I'd go clubbing. I would get in anywhere. I wouldn't get asked for ID. So I'd train during the week, spar on the weekends if Vince was here, get drunk on Saturday, Sunday, do it all again from Monday,
Yeah.
Basketball became a bit more serious for me. I got offered a few things in basketball, but never really took them up. My mum kind of put a stop to it all.
What was that?
She the whole religious thing. She didn't want me to become involved in like anything that was going to take over my life.
Wow.
Yeah, so she was kind of like getting a little bit hard and fast about that sort of thing.
Yep.
So anything that I did to do with sport or combat sports, I did without their knowledge.
Yep.
I was doing some martial arts. I was doing some Kempo at the time. I think I got up to brown, first black tip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was training Kempo. And yeah, it was just kind of a bit of a hybrid. I just do a bit of this and a bit of that. You know what I mean? And then didn't start fighting till I was 17. Then I had a run of kickboxing fights and boxing fights and just PCYC fights.
Yep.
When Pancration was around back in the day.
Hey, that's where I started.
Did ya?
Yeah. No.
So they used to run them at Liverpool PCYC.
Yep.
So I got chucked in there. So I'd do some Pancration tournaments, a lot of ISCA stuff.
Yep.
Lot of so they'd call it mod MMA.
Yep.
No head strikes but you can kick to the head. So
Yep.
it was like a bit of a strange art, but I just used to do all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was kind of part of my sporting life in high school.
Yep.
And then I got to year 10. I actually left high school in year 10, decided that I didn't want to finish my HSC at high school, and I went and did it at TAFE.
Yep.
Bit of an adult learning environment. I passed everything. And that was pretty much it for me in high school, just sports and learning. And
Yep. Did you have any idea what you wanted to do when you?
You know what? I love fighting. How can I put it? Like, I didn't go around looking for fights. Being a bigger kid, you get into some scraps.
Mm.
So, I remember I went to Ed's high school. It was like a bit of a rough, renowned high school. Older kids would try and pick on the young kids, and we'd end up in blues with them. And I kind of felt like pretty comfortable, And so I thought fighting's and I was always interested in getting better at it. So I think maybe that sort of sparked it, being in an environment where I kind of had to have a fight here and there.
Yep.
And just, I was around people who were doing fighting, and then I had, a guy from overseas coming, and I was training with him. So I think maybe that's where it sort of sparked with me. I was into fitness. I was always into fitness. So I kind of wanted to be involved in the fitness industry as well. So I did all my PT courses and all that at a young age. Till I was about, how old would I have been? 18, 19. At 19, I got into a lot of trouble at 19 years of age, and
Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. But might as well. Did some time at 19 years of age.
Yep.
So I did quite a bit of time at 19 years of age. So I was just running around being a gangster. Like I kind of, at 17, 18, I'd watch my uncles do their thing, and then became involved in the scene. It was pretty easy to get involved because, I knew the same people.
Yep.
And without saying too much more to do with what it was, but, weapons and drugs and things were accessible.
Yep.
So it was kind of like maybe a 2-year thing as, I kind of delved into it. Maybe it was a little bit of coming out of the whole stringent religion plus having that criminality in front of me at a young age.
It would seem easy because
it felt natural.
Yeah.
It felt natural.
That's what people don't understand. It's like, when you're in the environment, you just sort of gravitate to it. Right?
I wasn't a violent person at all. Like I wasn't a highly violent person. Like only fights I ever got into was if, something happened.
Yep.
So I never really had like a record of assaults or anything like that. I think even when I was arrested to do with weapons charges, there was no resistance. There was nothing like that. And, but I felt comfortable. Even being inside, like being incarcerated, I felt comfortable.
Yeah.
I'd been going to jails for a long time as a
visiting
kid.
your uncles and
stuff. Visiting family and not feeling. So when I got there, initially it was a bit like, all right, here we go. I was 19, like most 19-year-olds are sent to juvie, like it's now it's a bit different, but I was straight into adult prison in the MRRC, which is like, it's remand, it's an A1 classification. And honestly, I just kept training. So when I was in there, I just kept training, and that's kind of where I ended up at that age, and that formed a couple of years of my life, to be honest.
Yeah.
I ended up in not a bad position by the end of it because I was granted leave to go and study.
Yep.
So I've got a degree in exercise science that I completed by the time I left.
Yep.
I had money in the bank. I was actually working. I was on a work release program, so I didn't waste the time. And I was fit as fuck when I got out. So I pretty much just got back into competing straight away.
Yep.
As soon as this is an interesting story for you. You know who Tarek Solak is?
Tarek Solak.
He was the kickboxing promoter from Melbourne.
Yes.
Yeah, he actually. So I was training with a Turkish guy in there called Tunay Aksu. I'll never forget him. He's a legend.
I have to look him up after.
Yeah, he when I was on work release, he trained me for a year. And he actually was a friend of Tarek's, and Tarek actually came and visited me in jail and said, if you want to, you can have a fight, blah, blah, blah. I never eventuated.
Yeah.
But it kind of like sparked it in me again.
Yeah.
So I was sitting there on a visit with Tarek Solak, and I'm just like, fuck, all right, well, I guess I'll be kickboxing when I get out. You know what I mean? So I got out and I actually got straight back into martial arts. So I was teaching for Paul Zadro.
Mm-hmm.
So one of his guys had a school down in Southern Highlands.
Yep. And
I was teaching out of that. So I was just teaching some kickboxing, Muay Thai, some hybrid martial arts stuff that I'd learned. It was, to be honest, it was all thrown together. He didn't really want to run the school himself.
Yeah.
So I, had a background in Kempo. I'd done some jiu-jitsu. I'd had some kickboxing fights. I'd fought on the ISCA circuit for a bit. So he just chucked me into school, and I did that for a couple of years.
Yep.
Then a friend of mine, Bill Tracy, opened this gym right here, Grange Old School Boxing.
Yep.
Not long after that.
Yep.
And that's pretty much where I ended up after that. And that was where my boxing I learned. I only had a couple of fights out of there, but that's where I learned what I know about boxing. So anything that I learned before that, I was pretty much out the window. And I had a pretty decent education.
Yep.
And high level training partners from there on.
Yep.
So I don't even know what the question was to start with. But
no. I was just curious about, went from high school, you sort of gave me a little bit of a time on, which is great. It's one of those things, like I think, and boxing is still quite well appreciated around the world. Like I think money-wise, boxing still offers the biggest purses out of all the combat sports still. And I think, partially that's because of all the old money involved in boxing.
Yep.
But I think, it's one of those sports that a lot of people, if they're just watching it, they just think it's just two dudes punching on, right? But there's so much involved in it, right? Like there's levels and there's levels to boxing in terms of, it's amazing how much control you can develop just from two hands, right?
Like I train with a trainer, and he's quite well known trainer. He trains Paul Gallen at the moment, Graham Shaw. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk Zen and martial arts, he's probably the Zen martial artist of boxing in Australia. Like he's the technical way he approaches boxing. Not everyone can adapt to it, but it works.
Yep.
So he's had, Daniel Gill as a world champion. He's had, multiple champions. He had some really high level boxers under him at the time.
Yep.
I was privileged enough to train with him for 3 years. So that's, in my 20s, that was kind of like I learnt some pretty serious shit.
Yeah.
From guys that were highly regarded at the time and still are.
Yep.
So
and it changed the whole mindset towards martial arts, didn't it?
Completely, and to boxing in itself. Like the way I approach boxing now, I attribute to the education, and also, Bill, who actually opened the Grange, he worked with Johnny Lewis in the early days, and was very, very heavily involved in boxing for a long time.
Yep.
Gave me a completely different perspective and mindset on actually how to approach fighting.
Yep.
Very, very comfortable in explaining the way that he thought boxing should go.
Yep.
And he had just a genius mind when it came to, the directions you should send fighters and how you should develop fighters.
So I guess, do you mind sharing some of that? Like, I'm just curious.
So how can I put it into words? I watched him position fighters to be able to fight certain people at certain times. We see it now. We call it. It's done in a different way now because it's done by. I watch fighters being positioned and their records, to be straight up with you, are padded. So they'll position a fighter to fight someone that's not as good as them.
Yep.
The way that Bill and Graham used to approach fighting was, okay, we'll position you, to fight a particular fighter.
Yeah.
But you're going to develop the ability to beat this fighter, and this fighter is as good as you, if not better.
Yep.
So I'd watch them in the gym each day, and Bill was a genius at taking a fighter, breaking their mind down completely. He would sit there for hours and just talk to a fighter about what he thought was going on with them mentally and try and identify with that fighter.
Yep.
And sit there and get feedback from the fighter, and wouldn't just form an opinion based on what he thought.
Yep.
He'd say, okay, no, this is what's going on with you, and let's change this. And he'd change it mentally, and you'd watch it happen.
Wow.
Like during their sparring sessions.
Yep.
And I saw some pretty full-on sparring sessions with some like high-level dudes. Like we had dudes like Love Mondadu and Daniel Gill and Rob Medley and some pretty high-level guys in our team at the time. And I was an amateur with a couple of fights, just sitting there looking at these guys going, fuck. Like,
what's going on here?
Like full on, So I'd watch that whole mental side be developed. Then I watched Graham tie in with Bill and they develop a technical plan. And, to be honest, Graham would do a lot of the same things with the fighters, but he tweaked certain things to make it work for them and also to make it more effective, like delivery of a punch.
Yep.
Where to be after the punch, where to be before the punch, what you're thinking about here, what you're thinking about there. But somehow this system that they had just fucking worked.
Yep.
And I think like without being able to, I can't really label it, but being able to sit there and watch that and watch them work with Gary Francisco, who was their promoter.
Yep.
And watch them position fighters and the way they'd all work together to develop the fighter, position the fighter, get them the right fight to create a world champion was fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like it was, and the highs and the lows, like it was like literally to be in the Grange gym at the time was like a competition in itself. And, if you weren't prepared to fucking step up, you weren't going to survive there either,
wow.
so it's got a reputation for that.
Yeah.
And we try to replicate that.
Yep.
And I think we've carried that on to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But that's where my education in boxing came from.
One of the things that I really like about that is that it's tailored to the fighter.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of places, when you go and just join any martial arts academy, right? Like they sort of just teach you, okay, this is the cookie cutter set of what are the tools that you need to have. But the thing is like when you go into fight, like everybody has their own style, so to speak, and they're always going to have these things that they're going to fall back on.
Yeah.
Because when push comes to shove, it's like it's either going to be muscle memory, fight or flight. Like it's one of these things. They're either adrenaline dumping and gasping for air, right? Or they fall back into old patterns.
Yeah.
Right. So to think that just by showing them a particular style that you want them to fight, that they're going to not fall back into their own habits and patterns, it's not going to happen.
No.
Right. So yeah, it was one of those things where like I really like that that they tailored the program to the individual because once you understand that, hey, no matter what you do, when push comes to shove, they're going to fall back into these patterns. Let's now tweak those patterns to give them the best for them in those particular circumstances.
And understanding, I think for fighters too, understanding what the management process is. So there a lot of fighters will show up to a gym and never get shown what their actual path is.
Yep.
I don't believe in that. So I believe a fighter should be part of the management process.
Yep.
Because you can get feedback because I've got a couple of pretty good pros at the moment that are on a certain path and they know exactly who they're fighting, why they're fighting them, what's next after this fight.
Yep.
So it gives them the motivation to think, okay, if I perform here and this happens, I know what's next.
Yep.
Where a lot of, back the old thing back in the day was fighters weren't shown that.
Yeah.
It was like you show up, you fight, you get a cut of the money, you go home.
Yeah.
And it's very, very different now.
Yeah.
But I suppose also information is available, so can't really hide it, can you?
That's right. The records are there, right?
That's right.
And also, all the fight footage and things like that is 100%. There as well. So, compared to, I guess, pancration days, like I think there might be, I might have a few videos left from those days, but like far out, it'd be like 3-4 computers ago, you know what I mean? But like they'll never put on YouTube and all this sort of stuff. Nowadays, everything's,
100%.
And you can watch most amateurs fight on YouTube. Like you just, even the guy that I just fought, like that was his 6th fight with me. And I got to watch his footage, so I sort of had a bit of an idea in terms of how I wanted to approach the fight and things like that. But yeah, it's a very different world now where you can go and actually do your homework on somebody. If you've got a good team and they're doing the homework for you, like everybody's different, right? Like for me, I'm more of the, I'll do most of the things myself because I know how to analyze footage and what tape and all that sort of stuff, and then it's just about getting the work in. It's just about, okay, well, this is the game. Like I actually didn't I didn't do many specific drills for that particular opponent, but it was just like because I saw, okay, he's a southpaw. He likes to throw the spinning back kick. when he's in ortho. So every time he'd switch stances, I'd know to expect the spinning back kick.
Yep.
So it's just like these little things that I was like, okay,
habits.
I'm ready for it.
Yep.
And so then I was like, okay, so he knows zero about me because there's not really any of my footage online. Because all of my previous fights were like pancration or combat grappling. They were never in a cage, never in a ring, so they don't really count on the official record. So it's my debut.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, well, this is my game plan initially was like, okay, I'm going to come out southpaw. He probably won't expect it. I'm going to chop the leg, go for the calf, set up the body kick, and then I was trying to hit him with the inside crescent kick.
Yep.
After I'd set that up, but he was tall. And I was like, so
hard to reach.
Yeah. So it actually just missed. Like I think when I look back, I haven't seen the high quality yet, but it looks like it sort of just like clipped the top of his shoulder. But I followed up with the left hand straight after it.
Who threw that recently? An inside crescent kick? Was it someone on Bellator? Someone knocked someone out with an inside crescent kick.
Yeah, it's a very
underrated,
underutilized.
Yeah,
right.
I swear I actually watched it. It was like a couple weeks ago. I'm trying to remember what it is.
And so, especially for people like when you're in same stances, so when it's south on south or ortho on ortho, you can throw like once you set up that that leg kick, the teep, they're either going to be checking or they're going to be blocking, like parrying the stomach, and then the leg just goes on the inside. So that was what I wanted to catch him with, but then obviously because he was taller, it didn't do the damage that I wanted. So then I was in a fight after that.
But one thing.
Yeah. Well, like that was one of the first things that I wanted to set up. And then after that, then I was like, I'm comfortable fighting both stances. So then I thought, okay, once he gets used to me fighting south, then I'll switch to ortho, and I was trying to get the so off his right lead hook. So I was trying to just block it with my left hand and chin check off the inside. So they were the things that I'd already identified as part of my game plan. And then I also knew that once we got into this battle, like he's probably not going to want to just stand straight in front of me. He's probably going to charge me. And so then that was like preparing the underhook, the knees to the head, like the turning. That was all part of the plan. The gamemanship was more just I was really comfortable in there, it's like an old glove.
That's awesome.
You get in there and then it's funny, like the commentators are like, Johnny's fighting with his hands down and blah blah blah, and but the best comment that the commentator made was Johnny reminds me of a guy who loves violence. It's like, what the fuck do you say to that?
Not much, really. Yeah, I mean, if you're enjoying violence, you're enjoying violence. It's awesome.
My wife, she was like, oh, yeah, he's right. You're such a violent person.
It's a good compliment. Fucking awesome compliment. Very good. Mate, you talk about Zach, he's like that. He's one guy I look at and I just see his violence personified.
Yeah.
I think he's probably the most comfortable inside.
Yeah.
Rather than outside.
I used to call him Daddy Longlegs.
Yeah.
Right? Because like when I first came across Zach, he hadn't grown fully yet. And so like he wasn't too much tall. I think he was only like maybe 5'9" when I first met him. And then suddenly he's like, what, 6'2" or something like that?
6'2", 93, 95. Yeah, he's a beast. Yeah.
And so he's so big. And then, like, when I'd have to spar him, I'd be like, oh, fucking Daddy Longlegs. Like, so hard to get in on him.
He's only 25. And I look at him and I look at his background. He had a fairly hard apprenticeship. From what he tells me. So, like, I'm sure that he was out of the sport for a bit, but I'm just starting to see him blossom again, He's starting to come into it. He had a stoppage the other night, which was cool. So, and he was like jumping knees everywhere, which is cool. I'm enjoying like cornering some like kickboxers and MMA fighters again. So like it was a long time in between when I was doing that. I had Nathan Reddy for a long time, so I looked after him. And then I had a break after that. It was just pure boxing. But it's been cool, like cornering some K1 and
it's different. Like that's one of the things I love about getting to sit on the commentary side. Like I get to play devil's advocate. I get to sort of corner from both sides. I get to and look, every commentator approaches it differently. Like I was listening to the commentators that commentated XFC, and they're just sort of doing the play by play and sharing like the background information that they've received from the fighters or whatever. But I approach it a little bit differently. I'm always talking about strategy and tactics and what am I seeing in terms of what's being set up and those sorts of things. Like I think I guess my commentary is probably more geared towards the fighter watching it back and being able to go, oh, okay, so yeah, maybe this is something that I need to work on, or maybe that's something I did really well. But I don't think there's a right and wrong. It's just that's just the style that I've sort of become accustomed to.
I mean, you say you're it's what's in front of you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and like you also get to know. You probably see fighters and coaches over time. You'd start to understand the strategies too.
Yeah.
So that will have an effect on your commentary.
It's funny, actually. At the SSC card, like I think when you were giving some advice to one of your fighters, I could see your hands moving, and I'm like, I was basically lip reading what you were saying because I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, but that's all right because it's not like the other corner could hear it, right? Like I'm just there telling the thans, these are the adjustments that they're looking to make, and let's see what happens.
Yeah,
as they come out. Yeah.
Did it work? Okay, good.
It's one of those things
for that.
Yeah. So, but there's an art to cornering too, right? And this is what I think a lot of people wouldn't appreciate, right? So there's a lot of corners that just are like hype men, calm down, or let's go, like up, like okay, fuck. When you tell a guy to get up, okay, great, but how's he got to get up, right?
Cornering is, cornering is an art. It's an art in itself, but it's also like an art that you develop with your fighters over time.
Yeah.
As long as you develop together.
Yep.
If you've never cornered a fighter before, you have to corner them differently.
Yeah.
So you've got to be a little bit reactive.
Yep.
And keep them calm.
Yeah.
If it's somebody like I've had one of my fighters he's actually on the Sonny Bill card next week. He had 100 amateur fights. So over 100 amateur fights, we've got to know each other.
Yeah.
So I can corner him differently to how I corner. I had two guys in there for the first time the other night. That's a completely different corner.
Yeah.
So it's like over time you start to understand each other. And there's fighters I don't really need to have to say much either. I already know what they're going to do. They know what they're going to do. We've talked about it before.
Yep.
I can't teach you to fight in 60 seconds.
Yeah. That's
right.
right.
You know what I mean? So you go out and you do what you need to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's just the little adjustments.
That's it.
One of the funniest ones, well, not the funniest ones, but a good story was when I was down with my kickboxing gym. So Zane was fighting in the 8-man tournament for the Alpha Series, and it was almost like a corner battle because both corners were telling each of their fighters what's coming next.
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh shit, now they know that's coming. Now it's like, it became like a corner battle. And because it was almost like playing Xbox, right?
Yeah.
You push a certain button, the fighter does a certain move.
Yeah.
So when you start to get into those really intense battles, it's like, okay, like the corner will call for something specific, and then it's like, then if the person fighting doesn't pull the trigger, then it's like, okay, now you got to change to this because this is what's coming, and then this is the next thing that's coming, and it's like,
it's stressful.
Yeah, it can be so stressful. And look, my style is probably very stressful for anyone to corner because I'm there showboating and hands down.
Sounds fun though.
Yeah, look.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, look, it's. I would liken it to so Bobby Green from the UFC.
Yeah.
He's got a very technical approach. Like he's got great boxing, he's got great stand up. And I would say that if I emulated him a little bit in that fight, that's it's probably appropriate. It's distance management. If you're out of range, there's no point having my hands up because what are you gonna do? You can kick my hands. Like
that's right.
I might as well just be. If I'm out of the way, I'm out of the way.
Just relax.
Yeah. And then when I'm in range, then you got to be respectful. You got to respect the power. You got to respect the shot. So.
Range is a big thing. Like clearing attacks is a big thing.
Yeah.
Like especially in MMA. So I don't know. I think putting pressure on yourself to always be throwing and throwing and throwing, where you can be effective from distance too without doing much. So like the main thing that I always focus on with defense and distance is just make sure the judge is looking at you.
Yeah.
So if you're always looking sharp, and you always look like you're in control, they're looking at you. You don't need to take damage.
Yeah, judging is a whole nother thing, right?
You don't need to take damage. And like, that's all you need. You need them to look at you.
Yeah.
When you're inside and it's on, it's on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you obviously want to come out on top there, but yeah, I think range, people understanding what range and how good you can look from range and what range does for your scoring.
Yep.
Once a fighter understands that, they're getting their head around how to win a round.
Yep.
You know what I mean? On how to be on top for the whole round.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess, when you reflect back on some of your fights, right? Do you remember what your emotions were like in your first fight?
Fucking freaking out. Just not understanding really what was going on. Like sort of just, I got thrown in the deep end heaps of times just because, when I started boxing, it was like, you didn't even have to have your blue book signed. You could just go fight.
Yeah.
I remember going to South and fighting twice in one night.
Wow.
Like at the beginning and the end of a card.
Yeah.
Another time I think I did an exhibition and then a fight, and then on the weekend then I went 2 pancreation fights, and it was just all over the place,
Yeah.
I did get more comfortable though.
Yeah.
So like when I got into my early 20s and there was more kickboxing fights available, Steve Jez had fights available. I found the more that I fought, obviously the the more comfortable I got.
Yep.
You know, so it was what was the question again?
Like, I guess the emotions and you.
Oh, the emotions. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's exactly what it was. So like over time, they just became less and less.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just became sort of like a normal feeling.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever got over the initial adrenaline dump. I think for me, the initial adrenaline dump was always something that I battled with. But one thing I learned was just to let it happen.
Yeah.
And once it happened, you know, like you'll deal with it as you go.
Yeah.
You know. But amateur fighting, I don't know. It was I never turned professional. I never had a pro fight. But amateur fighting, I don't know. I enjoyed the 3-round format.
Yep.
So I knew that I could get in, get it done, and get out.
Fast paced.
Yeah. And it was fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And being involved in, you know, multiple styles, I could pretty much have a fight a week.
Yep.
So AMAC had something on, Iska had something on, one of the promoters had something on. There were always fights at Souths.
Yep.
It's unfortunate that it's been pulled up a lot now.
Yeah.
Like there's still a lot of amateur fighting available, but you can't just, you know, short notice go, I'm going to fight this week. You know, it's very different now. So fighters, you see a lot of fighters now. Even amateur fighters are very, very pro-like. They take their amateur fighters, not a development fight. It becomes like a pro.
Yeah.
Fight
Well, I would say the amateur level of today is the pro level of
back then.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. And some of them miss that development phase too, where you can just go fight regularly.
Yeah.
You know, like some of the guys that I've got fighting pro now, like I said, have had 60 to 100 amateur fights because they were just like fighting every week. But we go interstate to do that.
Yeah.
So I think the key to controlling emotions is regular competition.
Yep.
You know, like you look at guys in America, collegiate wrestlers, it's part of their school program.
Yep.
Boxing is part of their neighborhood, you know, program.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, and they're doing it all the time and every week.
Yeah.
And you see they're so comfortable in the competition.
You're always thrown in the fire. It just becomes normal.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we always say we need more of that here. The only thing we're getting more of at the moment is there's more shows. So, you know, I think we are getting a little bit more development in that way because there are more shows available, which is cool.
The crazy thing about the shows is that the shows are getting better and better too, right? And that then creates, you know, that hype.
Yeah.
Right. So that's part of the problem is like, you know, you almost just want, you know, you want a smoker, you know, you want the taste of competition without all the lights and things like
100%.
that. But all the shows are like, you know, there's all the glitz and the pyrotechnics and all the lighting and everything is like
cameras.
Yeah. Cameras. Right. Like, so because there's so much riding on it now, it's like people are, you know, and at the same time, there are guys that, you know, you get on a bit of a hot streak, 4 or 5, you know, amateur wins, and then people are telling you to go pro because nobody will want to fight you in amateur anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So it's hard to then, you know, foster that development for that fighter because they 100%. Get to this point in their amateur career where nobody wants to take a fight. Then it's like, well, I've got no choice.
Yeah.
Right. So
100%.
Yeah,
and there's protecting records is crazy in the amateurs. Like, I mean, we've all been guilty of it at some stage, saying, I don't want to lose this fight, or you know, like I won't take that fight because it's too hard. But you know, protecting records in the amateurs, I think, needs to be just given away. I think it needs the competition. I think recording amateur records is a waste of time.
Yeah.
I mean, fair enough. You lose 30 fights in a row, you probably should do something else. But if you're you know, but if you're a 50-50 amateur fighter that's having close fights and you're fighting regularly,
fighting tough competition,
who gives a fuck about your wins or losses? You know what I mean? If you're in there regularly, you're in there regularly, and that's going to make you a better professional.
Yeah.
So you know, you see guys who go through the pathway system. Not so much now. Like, it seems to have, the international competition seems to have slowed down through Boxing Australia, and like now that the Olympics has been taken out of, I think it's 2028.
Oh.
So boxing's been taken out of the Olympics for 2028. I think, that's the amount they used to fight all the time. They don't seem to fight as much anymore.
Yeah,
you know. But the guys that came through the pathway system that were, you know, when Don Abnett and a few of the guys that were originally in the Boxing Australia pathway, were taking guys overseas all the time. You'd see them just competing at a high level all the time, and they were good. I don't know. I think a lot of those guys have turned pro now or stopped boxing. Doesn't seem to be as much happening in the amateur scene in that way.
Yeah,
I think you're going to find there's going to be a bit of a gap in development soon.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. But the pro ranks are strong.
Yeah,
because everyone's turning pro.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So we're going to get, I suppose, there's going to be more money available to people.
Yeah,
there's more shows. But yeah, it will catch up. It will catch up. They have to do something. I know Boxing Australia has a new coach. It will catch up. There'll be a lack of development, and then you'll have that gap where there just won't be enough people turning pro.
Yep.
And then you have the same guys, you know, that are competing.
Come back in and push it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then, for you, like, when did you start getting involved in the whole promotion side of things? Obviously, you ran some promotions through Grange as well.
Yeah. So, when did I have my first one? 2012, I think. So what's that? 10 years ago.
Wow.
So I had, Grange. So basically, the Grange boys started to pull out of a little bit of what they were doing. And the gym was kind of handed to me.
Yep.
So I started running the gym as my own business. I ended up buying the building off Bill. Turned it into like a viable business, you know. So 2012, I had my first amateur promotion, which was a Grange promotion, I think out at Bargo Sports Club.
Okay.
Yeah, but I got 600 people
Hey.
to Bargo Sports Club.
That's
and I was
good,
just
yeah.
like, fuck, this is cool. So I just kept going. I would have done, I think before I moved down the South Coast, I would have done probably 30 amateur shows, maybe 10 pro-ams.
Wow.
As under the Grange banner. And then previous to that, there were large promotions. So Bill and Gary Graham were putting on, you know, stuff at the entertainment centre with, you know, Gil Mundine and, you know, they had Roman Karmazin, they had guys, they had big fights.
Yep.
So I was privileged to be able to be involved in those promotions as well.
Yep.
The organisations, that's where where I learned.
Yep.
But yeah, it was just boxing promotions for me. That's all I did.
Yep.
So I just did that for a good 8 years. I was involved in the Corporate Clash too. That was like a big corporate promotion. Raised somewhere around like $300,000 a year for Rotary.
Yep.
And we put on a world title for Tommy Brown. Put on a few Australian titles. Sam Goodman, I think, had his first fights on our shows.
Mm-hmm.
I had Ronald Quinlan for a while, so he fought like on some of our shows as well. Ebony, so I had Ebony Bridges for a bit. She before she went overseas, so she used to fight on our shows too.
Yep.
So yeah, it was kind of just based around what the Grange brand was.
Yep.
Yeah, and I did that for 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess, you know, running promotions, obviously, it's very challenging work.
Yeah.
You know, it can be very stressful as well. You know, last minute pullouts, all these sorts of things. People getting nervous.
Things have changed, man. Like
Yeah.
CSA came in and changed all that.
Yeah.
So we could, you know, you could rematch. You could rematch a fight on the day.
Yep.
And now you've got a 5 day.
Yeah.
Card
You got to
off.
submit. You got to submit your card 5
That's
days
right,
before.
5 days, and if you get pullouts,
Yeah.
too bad. You know, so you have to match like a pretty solid card.
Yep.
And have that submitted and good to go. Otherwise, you're not getting that fight back. You know? They used to allow reserves. They don't do that anymore either.
Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of that's changed. So CSA came in. Obviously, they came in for a reason. You know, they're Raptor based, so they're like CSA are a police, basically a police organisation. So I'm sure they were trying to stamp out whatever they felt was going on.
Yep.
Within combat sports at the time. And you know, they do regulate. Regulation is not a bad thing.
Yep.
Regulation keeps things safe.
Yep.
So, you know, hopefully CSA being involved has stopped some injuries and deaths too.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So like on the flip side of it, there's always two sides to everything. So
Of course.
So hopefully the regulation's been a good thing as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but yeah, to answer your question, yeah, like matching cards is hard.
Yep.
Yeah. And man, coaches are precious. Fighters can be precious too. Like it's, you know, you can have things as silly as, I don't know, something's happened that week that literally something you could probably deal with as generally as a person, but fighters are real finicky about having everything perfect.
Yeah.
So they'll just pull out.
Yeah.
You know, or they just won't feel like it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
I think anyone who's serious about trying to make a career in it, like, you have to be professional, right? Like, it's just one of those things.
Yeah,
a lot of the guys just want want to be able to say that they're a fighter, right?
That's it. And or work with the promoter and just let them know this is what's going on with me. You know, like if a promoter, you know, if a promoter's putting a card on and you can say, listen, man, I got some serious shit going on mentally.
Yeah.
I don't feel like fighting. Rather than pull some bullshit excuse.
Yeah.
Just say, I really don't feel well. Do you mind? I don't want to take this fight, and don't leave it to the last minute.
Yeah.
Do it a couple of weeks out.
That's right.
Let them know how you feel.
Yeah.
The promoter will work with you and then say, okay, well, man, we'll put you on the next card.
Yeah.
You know, and
That's
you
right.
build, and I've built probably more relationships with coaches and fighters that way
Yeah.
than actual people fighting on
That's
the card.
it. Yeah. You got to help each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Start working together, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm, you know, with SFC, Lena and Beck are promoting that, and I'm sure it's stressed them the fuck out. Like, so like it's yeah, it'll be a learning curve for them. I'm pretty chilled about it because once you set once you set everything in motion, it's gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna happen anyway. You know what I mean? So once the paperwork's all submitted and everyone's matched, like you end up with 8 fights, you got 8 fights. You got 20 fights, you got 20 fights.
Yeah.
So just let it happen. You know,
Yeah.
it's just,
Well, so and that's the thing, like with the whole pro-am thing, right? Like, that's what I mean by the level of the promotions have increased so much that, you know, an amateur fight card is almost as good as it's as good as a pro show
because it's matched properly.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
you're 100% right. I'd rock up to South to fight, and you wouldn't know who you're fighting.
Yeah,
like you could get matched on the night.
Yeah,
it's crazy, and there's like knockouts everywhere. You know?
Yeah.
Now the fights are like that.
Yeah, very close.
Yeah, and well matched, and everyone knows the background of who they are. And yeah, you're right, 100%.
Yeah.
All
right, let's switch gears a little bit.
Yeah,
because work-wise, you know, you also do some work in disability.
I do.
And so I'm really curious, like, when did that start, first of all? So let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
And then and then we can talk more about it, I guess.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
So about 4 years ago, I was coaching full time, so for a long time. So I was head coach for New South Wales for a number of years. I was part of the AIS program, so I'd be between here and the AIS, you know, for sort of weeks and months at a time.
Yep.
And my gym at the time, I had 48 active amateurs and 11 professionals at one time. So it was burning me out.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay, well, this is cool. I got a good gym, it's successful, it's making money. I own the building. Like, what else can we do here? Not much, right?
Yeah.
So I started to scale back. I actually started to sort of like pull away from it slightly, you know. And this is before COVID as well. So this is before the whole COVID thing hit. Mm-hmm. So a friend of mine had an agency, and she was working in disabilities. And I said, I wouldn't mind trying it, like just sort of working with one person and just see what it's like.
Yep.
So she gave me, the guy that I work with now is the first guy that I got. So he's high needs, highly violent. I'm not going to go into it too much, but
of course not.
Mental health institutions, jail. So basically my role, I had some experience in that. So basically my role was to help transition these guys back into the community.
Yep.
They're people, and you know, they're as much as people are, you know, fear them, and they are on, you know, disability funding, and they're on high levels of medication, and you know, can be scary at times. They're still people, and they do have a right. And you know, organisations like the NDIS and people and government organisations that fund them realise that there has to be some flexibility in allowing these people to live.
Yeah.
And I think it works. I think it works. So I got involved in that agency. Went out on my own after that. So I had a couple of guys that come fresh out of jail, a couple of guys fresh out of mental health institutions, successfully integrated into the community, you know. And one that I work with now, he's full time in the community, and I'm full time with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's kind of like family now. So it's more. I don't really see it as work.
Yeah.
You know. So I'm basically employed by him to make sure that his life functions. You know, and I have a close relationship with his family. So they're Islander heritage.
Yep.
So I have a close relationship with his family and it actually took us a long time to restore that also.
Yeah.
So he's now able to have a relationship with his family.
Yep.
And man, it's okay for him not to be okay. Like, he's going to have, we've just come off a crisis period, and he's going to have more of that. It's going to be lifelong for him.
Yeah.
So it taught me that it's okay for people not to be all right. You know, and it's just who they are.
Yeah.
You know, and I actually love it.
Yeah.
So outside of this, that's what I do, and I can be on call 24 hours a day.
Wow.
You know, depending on what's going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have there ever been any scary moments?
Heaps.
Yep.
Yeah, recently, like heaps. So delusions are very real for these people. Schizophrenia is very real for a lot of people, and it's not, and they're reacting out of fear. It's not that they're angry, or it's not that they are psychotic. It's, you know, when people look at they think about the word psychotic, they picture a guy with a fucking knife coming at you. It's not like that.
Yeah.
Psychosis for some people is very real. It's fear.
Yeah.
So, you know, everything they do is based on, it's very real to them. So if a delusion kicks in and something happens, is, you know, there's two ways to deal with it. They need to just be left alone, medicated slightly, just to be okay. As long as they're not hurting anyone, everything's sweet. Or you know, there's they need to get help.
Yep.
So you need to do a welfare check and have. I don't call the police. It's not that I don't want to. It's more a fact that I feel it heightens the situation. So I'd rather go
escalator.
in. Yeah, I go in and I try and help and try and talk. and then call an ambulance. I feel an ambulance is going to be more helpful because they've got everything that you need there.
Yep.
If he chooses, if he chooses to go with them, he does. If he doesn't, it's his choice.
Yeah.
But at least he's had the option,
Yeah.
Obviously, if it escalates any further, you have to protect the community, and then they need to go in.
Yeah.
So that's and for themselves as well.
Yeah.
But my guys know that that's an option for them, so I've made it okay for them to ring me and tell me, Anthony, I need to go and have a stay in the hospital. So usually I just go pick them up.
Yep.
And take them there, and they go and have a chat to the psychiatrist.
Yep.
And they deal with it, and they usually they de-escalate by just sleeping for a couple of days.
Yep.
Then they're back home.
Wow.
So we've kind of worked out a system,
Yeah, that's good.
So it's taught me heaps, man. Like, I think even down the track, once I finish, I don't know if I'll ever finish coaching, but once coaching becomes like a part-time thing for me, I think that's pretty much where I'll end up.
Yeah.
Is in that sector.
Well, one of the things about the hospital system, it can be very draining. Like, and I'm speaking from experience here as well. But the times that I had to take my mum into Cumberland Hospital, it's like a 3-4 hour wait before she can even see anyone. Is it the same thing?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Shell Harbour is not too bad. It's fairly quiet in there, and they have all the mental health facilities there. So they have the quiet rooms as well. So if you do have something going on, if there is. If I've got someone that's kicked off, we can go straight in there and they can just have a room on their own, just to de-escalate for a little while. Wollongong Hospital, I had a guy that I took in there. It was pretty much, he died 2 days later, but I took him in there and we couldn't get him in, and I literally said, "Man, this guy's dying. Like, you need to sort of get him in now." 4 hours, and and he had internal bleeds and stuff. So he had cancer, so he was on the way out, but he'd had the vaccine like a few weeks before, and they said it just seemed to like set him off and just didn't react with his system very well. And he was gone like not far after that, but they couldn't see him for 4 hours, so might have been able to save him if they'd been able to see him that 4 hours. So it was the hospital system, I think, unfortunately, is inundated, and I don't think it's going to recover for a long time. There's the health system's clogged up at the moment.
All right, well, fuck, that's a bit heavy.
It is heavy. It is heavy, but that's what I do, man, on a daily basis. Like, I deal with this stuff on a daily basis. Like, I've had a few deaths, and it's not easy, but like, it teaches me that we've only got one shot
at life.
And some of these people don't get the same shot that we do.
Yeah, and I think it teaches you to be grateful, right? Like,
I think it does.
You look at your own life and then go, okay, I'm grateful that I'm not in that position. I feel sorry for the ones that are.
Yep.
And you're doing your best to obviously help the people that you're supposed to help, and help them to try and maximize the quality of their life as well.
Yep.
And that's all you can really ask for, really. Like, we can all hope that they manage to get better or whatever, but at the end of the day, for some people, unfortunately, they don't. Right?
No, they don't. It's a lifelong thing for them.
Yeah. And so, I think. No suffering should be wasted, and when I say that, it's like if somebody else is suffering, like you should take those lessons and be grateful for your own life.
100%.
Right, so that suffering isn't wasted.
Yeah.
I view the same thing. Like, even like with my mate, part of the reason why I started the podcast was I had a mate commit suicide in 2019, right? So he was obviously having some suffering, and so I don't want that suffering to go to waste. I want to remember the good moments with him and some of the things that we celebrated in his life, and what kind of a guy he was, and those sorts of things. And that's why I ended up starting the podcast.
Yeah, that's cool.
Very cool. Now I'm like 70 plus episodes in, and we're
Yeah,
still going. So,
yeah.
But I've taken that and enjoyed it for myself.
That's really good because man, we can take things for granted. Like everything's so accessible for us in life, particularly when you don't have mental health issues either.
Yeah,
you can just like everything's at your fingertips.
Yeah,
and I do think as a society we're just at times we can just be fucking brats.
Yeah, well, I said this. I actually
like,
said this in my post-fight interview that everybody's suffering in some form of another.
Yeah.
Right, and the difference is that is it voluntary or involuntary suffering?
Exactly.
Right, involuntary suffering means that you've got money. You might have money problems. You might have health problems. You might have lost a loved one. Like they're forms of involuntary suffering. You might have somebody who's sick.
Yeah.
Right, but if your life is pretty good and you don't have too much involuntary suffering, you need to have some voluntary suffering in there.
Yeah.
You need to go out and do something hard, do something difficult that makes you actually appreciate life.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Don't be a sook. Pretty much. Yeah. It's pretty much how it rolls, eh? There's too much of that around.
Yeah.
And it's easy for people to vent now. Get on social media, you can just vent and it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
So I don't really rate that either. It's like I suppose I become a little bit hard against people being that way because I sort of see people on a daily basis who don't have a choice.
Yeah. And like you because if your life is revolving around social media, you only see those things there when there's real life conversations to be had that are so much more deep and meaningful.
100%.
Right. That's why I love the podcast, and also why I'm a shit marketer of my own podcast because I'm too lazy to go back through and try and cut out excerpts. I tried it for a little while and I did it for like 2 days, and I'm like, I can't be fucked doing this. I'd rather just have the conversations, enjoy the moment, enjoy the experience, and have this memory that I can share with this person for the rest of our lives.
That's very cool.
And if people find it, that's great. If they don't find it, okay, well, that's your loss.
Man, I'll be honest with you. Like I very rarely open up. So like even to partners and like, so this has actually taught me a little bit about opening up because I don't know who's going to see this.
Yeah.
So right now, this is actually like
you're scared.
No, it's massive growth.
Yeah.
I like actually like saying some shit that like I don't know. You never reflect on your own life too much when you're always doing for others.
Yeah.
So like this is actually like pretty cool. I'm actually like, and
you're enjoying it too.
I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm grateful that like I'm able to do this, and actually I'm learning some shit about myself.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Well, it's one of the unintended consequences of this. It's like, when you've done as many episodes as I have, it's like I've got like this pseudo psychology degree where it's like I start to pick on things and people go, oh, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. You do. Like you made me talk.
So okay, let's switch gears again.
Yeah.
I guess, I want to talk a little bit about relationships, right?
Yeah.
So I guess, for you growing up, how did you view relationships when you were younger versus how you view them now? And I guess, some of the learnings that you might have around that.
I still fuck up, man. So like I'm on my third.
Yep.
So like major relationship. So like actually going through a divorce at the moment. But I have a new partner.
Okay.
It's not bad, it's not messy, it's just financial, and it's got to go through legals, and
of course.
This is how it rolls,
Yep.
My first partner, I've got a child to. So I suppose I may have learnt some instability, like being honest. I may have learnt some toxicity and instability growing up.
Yeah.
So I'm really good with the person I'm with.
Yep.
And because I used to see relationships where people weren't good to each other.
Yep.
So maybe I try and overcompensate, and maybe to a point I burn the relationship out because maybe I'm too full on. I'm trying to do too much. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I think over the course of the relationships, now I'm starting to learn just to chill out a bit more and just let the relationship roll.
Yeah.
You can't fix everything.
No.
You can't make everything happen. Like in a relationship, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yep.
And one thing is really important to me now is people are who they are. I can't make you be how I want you to be.
Yep.
You can't make me be how you want, what version you want.
Me, yeah.
If this works, it works.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's the same with any relationship with a person.
Yeah.
I may get along with you. I may not get along with him.
Yep.
So relationships, if you're talking about like partners.
Yep.
Initial attraction is always there with someone. That's cool for the first 6 months. You're right into each other, and then you get to the nuts and bolts, and you see what happens after that. You know? I've definitely fucked up. Like I've definitely ended relationships on terms where I probably could have been a little bit more understanding of the other person's feelings. But I think at the time I was like, no, this doesn't work.
Yep.
It's over. You know what I mean? So I need to actually look at what I actually did in those circumstances and relate it to the relationship I'm in now, and hopefully I've learned something. Because if this doesn't work out, the girl I'm with now, she's brilliant, like brilliant. She's more than I could ask for. But we have quite a dynamic because she has a 3-year-old. She's a bit younger than me too, so like this will be her first major experience, in a relationship, and I don't want her to have a bad one. So if it does run its course, I still want it to be nice for her.
Yeah.
So I think I learned that, and I don't know. I think trying to I don't want to relate it to anything that happened to me as a kid because it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think if I did that earlier on and I did roll stuff over into my earlier relationships, big mistake.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You don't want to tie it with the same brush, and
no,
you're different people, and sometimes you learn what not to do in a relationship.
Yeah.
Right. Like just in one of my, I did a podcast with another mate, Julian, and he opened up and told me this story that his father was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And then, so for him, he hardly ever drinks, right? And I actually picked up on it at events because it would be like somebody would say, oh, you know, I'll buy you a beer, and he'd just sort of be a bit awkward, be like, yeah, okay, no worries. Like,
he's programmed himself.
Right?
To that, yeah.
But so he says okay, but really he's not really that interested in drinking it.
Yeah.
And so then he always orders like a cup of Coke or whatever to go with it. And when he told me, you know, it was because his dad was an alcoholic, and it was just one of those things that he was like, I don't want to drink, like it doesn't interest me. And so then the first time he ever actually had a drink was actually at his brother's wedding.
Right.
And it was a really big thing for the family because they all knew that he wouldn't drink.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like he used the parable of, you know, two brothers, you know, with an alcoholic dad, and one is an alcoholic. And they said, oh, why do you drink? And he goes, I learned it from my dad. And then the other one's not an alcoholic. And then they asked him, why don't you drink? I learned it from my dad.
Yeah.
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 I've been around alcoholism, and it's fucking horrible.
Mm.
Yeah. So I can relate to that. I'm not a drinker.
Yeah.
Not a smoker, which is cool.
That's one of the benefits of being into martial arts. You sort of avoid those vices. Like, you sort of avoid the unhealthy ones and instead just have like this really obsessed mindset on.
You can, though, being a fighter, you can be a bit of a binger.
Yeah.
So, like, I know a lot of fighters are disciplined in camp. Outside of camp, they're fucking horrible.
Yeah. Well, they're fighters, not martial artists.
Okay, there we go. That's true. That is very true. That's a completely different analogy. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So,
spot on.
Yeah, that's why I always say, like, you know, one of my other friends said, oh, you know, you're looking lean, and I'm like, yeah, I'm always this lean. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's what I do. Yeah.
You know, that's actually a fucking good point. Like, yeah, fighters and martial artists are very different in that way.
Yeah.
Very different in that way.
Yeah. And that doesn't disparage a fighter. Like, at the end of the day, you're doing something that's fucking hard.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can be ultra successful at it, fantastic.
Yeah.
But you're doing it because you've chosen that as how you want to make money.
Yeah.
Right. So a fighter is a prize fighter. Like, you're looking to try and make money. You're not a fighter for shits and giggles. Like, anybody who's a fighter for shits and giggles, you end up dead. Right. Like, that's the reality.
That's right.
Like, if you're just fighting on the street, you're going to get stabbed. You're going to get shot. Something's going to happen. But if you're a prize fighter, you're fighting in the ring, you're fighting in the cage, you're doing it to make a living, no problem. Like, and you're going to make your living. I hope you invest it smartly and you do the right things, because there are so many fighters who make their money and get fucked over.
Get fucked over and also don't have a plan B, because your fight career is only this long.
Yeah.
So your life's this long.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do outside of that?
Yeah.
You know, did you build up skills before your career?
Yeah.
And what skills do you have after your career?
That's right.
There's a lot of, like, without mentioning names, I keep an eye on a few fighters at the moment, and they're way too long in their boxing careers. They're sort of stretching into their late 30s, and they want to keep going. You're just like, fuck, man. Like, you'll be 40 soon.
Yeah.
What are you going to do after 40?
That's right. How much damage have you taken? Like
that. Yeah, there's no sponsorship there for you. You got to have a job.
Yeah.
You got to have a career, you know?
Yeah.
So that influenced me a lot to actually not even turn professional. I threw myself into coaching young.
Yeah.
So, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Like, it took me I've been around the world.
Yeah.
You know, like doing some cool things. So
yeah.
I think you can make a really good career out of coaching if you've got a business
mindset.
brain.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I'm sort of the same. Like, I did it the opposite way. I went into work, you know, had a corporate career and all that sort of stuff, and so now I'm like doing the opposite. But I'm, you know, older in age, but I've got all this experience and
100%.
So, you know, I haven't taken a lot of damage, which is also a good thing. So you know, I can afford to do it a few more times.
Good.
But yeah, it's just one of those things.
And genetics, you got good genetics.
Yes. Yeah. So, well, like I said, look like this until I'm 60 or 70, and then you'll be like, what happened to Johnny? He's like a. So, so I just want to switch gears again, and let's talk a little bit about gyms and business, right? Because obviously, I think a lot of people underestimate how much business is actually involved in running a gym, right? Like, a lot of people think, if I can teach well, then I'll have a successful business.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way.
No. It's two models. You're either going to have a fight gym, which you make no money out of.
Yep.
Or you're going to have a fitness business, which is going to make you some money.
Okay.
So they're the two models. So if you can somehow find a crossover between those two.
Yep.
I look at Alex's gym, so I do a fair bit with Karaoke MMA.
Yeah. Hornsby.
Yep. So, I look at the way he set his gym up. He's got legacy jiu-jitsu running upstairs. He's got a good kickboxing program. He's only got one pro, which is Jacinta. And he has a bunch of amateur fighters. That's a good model.
Yeah.
That's a good model because he's got multiple income streams.
Yep.
For me, a boxing gym, so one art.
Yep.
So unless I'm teaching multiple cardio boxing classes, like, this gym's not going to make money.
Yeah.
So, like, professional fighters, you know, the first 2 to 3 years of their career, you're not going to make anything. I don't take money off pros. So, but you do have a contract later on that once they get into the big money fights, there's a percentage there, right?
Yep.
So you can make money from that later on. But other than that, you have trainers come in, they pay rent for the space. you know, you have other businesses running where you can run a tax offset. Yep. So you do have to have a little bit of a business mindset. So if this place is losing money, it comes off my tax bill. If other business losing money, I'll sort of offset it, the other tax bill. So you just got to be smart about what you do. You know, don't expect to make money off fighters. Just if you go in with that mindset, it's going to be a completely different experience for you. So it's not going to work. Being honest, I'm actually completely. If you notice, I've kind of like just left the gym how it is at the moment. I'm actually gutting this whole gym soon. So this room here will be a pretty like exclusive boxing space, but the rest of the gym across the outside, I've got Hammer Fit and Fit Tech coming in to fit it all out. And I'm just going to run a swipe gym. Okay. So I'm just going to put in like an anytime fitness type thing. Oh, okay. Yeah, so that'll pay for itself. I'll have a good membership base in this immediate area. That'll pay for everything. So I think that's probably for me the smartest business model. I've got 6 fighters I'm focusing on that I want to work with. I have my disability business that I run. So if I need the bills covered here, I need to have something that's non-manned. And it's just an automatic membership system. So that's the next thing.
That's a smart idea. And then you got PTs that will obviously come in, operate their business out of here, pay you some rent.
That's it. And we're in a pretty unique situation here. Like we've got an event center next door. Event center next door, so we can run some events there. So I'll set it up to be a bit of a membership mill. And then that way that'll afford me to be able to come in and just train the fighters. Which is pretty much that's where my interest is. So I ran cardio classes for years, man. Like when I had the gym up at Smeaton Grange, like my cardio classes would have like 60 people in them, and we had the room for it. So it was huge. Like we had a massive program up there, but it was a 15-hour a day operation. That's right. Which is I won't be doing that again.
Yeah, it's hard work. Like people don't realize how hard it is if you trying to run a gym and let's say your model is you run classes and then you're doing privates in between. Like they're long days.
PTs like privates, crazy. Yeah. I mean, if you stretch yourself too much with privates, your quality of what you're doing with your fighters is going to get affected. Yeah. So I try not to do that. Yeah. I try to avoid it. It's not always avoidable, but
yeah. I always view it as you've got like this energy bar, right? Like so every day you wake up and let's say it's at 100%. And then depending on what you fill your day with, by the time you get to the other things that you really want to do, you might only have 30% left in the tank.
Yep. Right? 100%. And if you've got a family.
Yeah. Well, they make you start with only 30%. When you got young ones and they're crying and you wake up and anyway. Yeah. It's not good for the recovery.
How many you got?
I got 3. Oof. Yeah, six. My son just turned 4 and then my youngest will turn 2 in December.
That's cool.
And so she's at like a really cool age now where like she's waddling around trying to talk and doing all those things, but it's interesting, watching the dynamic between the 3 because I would say, the eldest Cadence, she was very observant, like I said, she can entertain herself. Like even today, even nowadays, she can still entertain herself. Like sometimes she'll just be hiding in the study drawing or writing or playing by herself and things like that. Whereas my son, he's like, he needs entertainment and he'll go and play up with her or make, annoy her to have fun or whatever. And the youngest, she's like, just wants attention, right? Like, so she's at that age where, and I guess the difference is that, for the oldest, she didn't have to fight for anybody's attention. So when she wanted attention, she could get it and then she could be comfortable to do her own thing. With the youngest, it's like, I always want to be the center of attention kind of a thing. So it's like, she'll run up and, if you're trying to give one of the other kids a cuddle, she'll be there, like pulling them off or pushing them. And my kids are ruthless; like they'll bash each other, like they're ruthless.
Oh, it's funny.
Yeah, yeah. So much so, my wife was like, "Oh, don't let them watch you fight." Like she doesn't want them to be any more influenced. Whereas it doesn't change anything. Like my daughter sat on top of him and put him in a headlock and all that sort of stuff. So
I train my partner at the moment, and she's like starting to get into like. Boxing and kickboxing, and she's doing some BJJ, and her daughter's 3. She's now my daughter too. Like I've sort of taken that role on, and she'll come up to you and shin kick you, and you sit there and you've got to teach her the balance. Like it's okay to shin kick people sometimes, but it's got to be in the right environment. If you go and shin kick your friends, you're probably going to get into some shit. You know what I mean? So they absorb it. They absorb it. It's crazy, and lots of energy. But like mother, like daughter, they're sort of like throwing a lot of punches and kicks, and it's interesting.
Jits. I think jits is the best for girls. I always, it's one of the things I guess from a mindset perspective. Like I want all my kids to do martial arts. But I want my girls especially to make sure that they get at least a purple belt in BJJ or something like
absolutely.
that. Because when a female's going to get in trouble, it's going to be one-on-one in a situation with a dude, and if it's going somewhere that they don't want it to go, well, I want them to be able to, you know,
Do something.
Yeah, do something, put him to sleep, break an arm or something like that, and get out of there.
Yep.
Right. For my son, it's a little bit different. Like I want him to do everything, because you know, when is a guy going to get in trouble? Well, sometimes it's going to be a fight, and there's going to be multiple people, and it's not ideal to be on the ground with one person and having somebody else stomping on your head.
That's right.
So,
got to throw down and go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's right.
So it's interesting. Like, 'cause, people have asked me, oh, you know, what will I do with my kids? And I was like, oh, well, this is what I'll do, and these are the reasons why. And they're like, oh,
that's it.
You've actually put a lot of thought into this.
100%. I think every kid, every man or every person should at least do some sort of combat, martial art or sport or something. Just because it sort of, I feel like just for life skills in general, like confrontation for people can be like very, like just they won't engage in it. Yeah, and there can be anything like it. Having skills or having confidence just to be able to like stand up for yourself in a secular situation. Like you don't have to be a dominant person, but you also don't have to be dominated. Yeah. So I think everyone should do some sort of martial art or something. Yeah. You know, just to and experience sparring. Yeah. Just experience it, because it's, you know, fight or flight is, you know, that phrase was developed because that's how it used to be. We used to fight. Yeah. We used to fight for our food. Like now we're comfortable. We can sit on lounges and drive our cars and, you know, maybe never experience any sort of combat situation. Yeah. But I think once you do, it changes you. Yeah, it teaches you a lot about yourself. Yeah, 100%. You learn about what kind of person you are. And just because you might be the person that, you know, on your first session you're cowering in the corner, like that doesn't mean that's always going to be you. It'll develop. Yeah, it'll develop over time. You gain this resilience to it. And then you also, you know, depending on the place, like obviously, you know, if you're just getting beat up every single time, it's probably not the best idea. Culture. Yeah. It's a culture of your gym, hey. Yeah. It depends on where you're at. If it's developmental, you won't have that experience, you know? Yeah. We've all been to that gym where they want to throw you in to get shit beaten out of by whoever's the king, you know, whoever's the big dog in the gym at the time. Yeah, but look, at the same time, some of the gyms, like, you know, I don't mind that. I guess for where I am at, like, I don't mind that at certain places. Bit of fun? Yeah, it's a bit of fun, you know, like, yeah. And I think, like, it's, and that's one of the things, like, why I can be so relaxed. It's like, if I'm getting beat up by somebody who's, you know, got 10 kilos on me, then I know that anybody my weight's not going to really hurt me. Yeah, 100%. Right, it's the same thing, right? Like if you're training jits with bigger dudes, and let's say they got 10 kilos on you every single time or whatever, then you feel confident if you're going to be wrestling with somebody that's your size. Yeah. Right. So it's good to have that balance. Like you don't always want to be the smaller person. No. But you don't always want to be the bigger person, because if you're always the biggest in the room, then you don't have to finesse your technique. It's funny, like with jits, it's they don't really, when you're training, they don't really look at the weight. Nah. Just throw you in the room and off you go. You know what I mean? I actually don't think that's a bad thing. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. As long as it's not like, you know, 80 kilos difference. Yeah. Like I think 40 is probably the cap, right? Like if you're 40 kilos on somebody, so like if you're a, you know, 60 kilo person, you shouldn't be rolling with too many dudes that are over 100. No, not in a competitive way. No. Yeah. You can drill absolutely, but you shouldn't be going balls to the wall. That's it. You know? Yeah. Because it's just one wrong misstep or whatever, or somebody loses balance or whatever, and that goes through your elbow or something like that, and it's just like, fuck. You hear some horror stories. Yeah. All right. Well, so if people obviously want to follow what SFC is doing, so that's Southern Fighting Championship. Yep. And so that's at, I think it's Southern_Fighting_Championship. That's it. Yep. So that's our Instagram handle for that. Yep. We've got another event coming up 20-something of November. 26th, last one for the year. Yep. Yeah. So we're trying to cover all codes again. So we're just trying to just cover the platform for the amateurs to be able to compete. So we're going to run, obviously, amateur boxing, amateur K1, but we're going to probably put together 3 amateur MMA fights and just do it in the ring. Yep. As well. So and I think New South Wales rules, if you're under 18, you can't compete in the cage. Yep. So we're going to try and match some junior fights. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's cool. I think I might do that, because there's a couple of boys at Triple X that are under 18 that are quite talented. Yep. So I might just try and get them matched so they can fight. Yep. You know, so there's that youth level. Yeah. MMA is like sort of lacking a bit of competition. Yeah. So we'll do that. Yeah. The sport's growing so fast. Like it's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I mean, we don't have any aspirations to, you know, be a Foxtel show. It's more a platform show. Yep. You know, we got a pro debut on that show for Tawana Campbell's younger brother. Yep. So he'll have his professional boxing debut on that show. And we'll just keep doing things like that, you know. Yep. Yeah, and they're a bit of fun, man. They're just, my guys all like it. I had like some amateur debuts on that show, and like they just seem good. The brand's pretty cool.
Yep.
Actually, like with SFC, I was asleep and I woke up at like 3 a.m. With this SFC brand in my head, and I just started writing it. And then I got onto my graphic designer. By 6 a.m. she had the logo done. By 8 a.m. I'd bought a ring and a cage.
Oh wow!
So that's how it pretty much started. And then Lena got involved, and so we needed a promoter, and I kind of like stepped out of it then financially and just let it run.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And just now just all my guys compete on it. So it's cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
And then obviously if people want to find Grange, what's the handle?
Grange High Performance.
Yep.
Yeah, Grange High Performance. So just type that in, it'll come up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then do you want to plug your own or?
Yeah. So Anthony Redward. So add Ant Redward GHP.
Yep.
That'll come up. So I'm pretty active on my page. Got a lot of things coming up. I've always got guys fighting everywhere. So we're busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I look forward to hopefully commentating the next SFC card. So.
Same, mate. Yep. Awesome. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Cool as.
All right. Thanks everyone.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right. My pleasure.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.